Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wonder Series Wednesday, your weekly opportunity to think outside the box and wonder what life would be like if you looked at your life from a different perspective, if you opened your mind, if you opened yourself up to the possibilities and the opportunities that are out there. And ultimately, how that could help you to live that healthy, happy lifestyle that you have been dreaming of. I'm Denise Stiegel, everyone. I'm the CEO and curator here at livinghealthylist.com and your host of the Wonder Series. And today I am here with my dear friend, Mary Wilder, who is the executive director at Gift of Life Transplant House. And I know a few of you have heard me talk about Gift of Life for the past, 18 years. And Mary is there at the helm. And Mary, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, it's just such a delight to be here. Thank you so very, very much.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a joy to talk with you. So, Mary, tell us a little bit about who Mary is, what your background is, and how you got to Gift of Life Transplant House.
Sure. Well, so interestingly enough, I have a degree in accounting. Not what you would think of for being an executive director. However, that's when I first got out of college, I absolutely did not want to do people's taxes. That just did not spark any excitement for me at all. But I did want to give back to organizations that couldn't necessarily afford an actual accountant, but were able to pay a little bit more for a higher level bookkeeper, I'll call it. And that's where I started out, was working in nonprofits that really needed assistance and help, and we're obviously looking for some additional help with their bookkeeping. Well, as time went on, that just lends itself into working a little bit more with the leadership of the organization, those operations directors, all those other people, CFOs, lots of times. And so as a result, I just moved gradually into more of a leadership position, until eventually I was executive director for other nonprofits. So I've worked as the executive director for an organization that helped people with traumatic brain injury and at a private school and things like that. But my husband has a business here in Rochester, and he had been commuting back and forth between Rochester and Apple Valley, Minnesota, which is about an hour and 15-minute commute one way. And he came home one night and said, I can't do this anymore. This is, after 18 years, I'm kind of done, over it. And he said, would you ever consider moving to Rochester? And I said, of course, I'm always up for a change. And let's go. And he said, well, you probably should find something to do. Ha, ha, ha. And so I began looking around. Of course, I found that accounting position right away. But my heart was just not there. All I felt was, you know what, I've been there, I've done that. That's not where my passion is. And then I found the ad for Gift of Life Transplant House. And because of the fact that I had donated my kidney to my dad many, many, many years ago, it resonated immediately with me. And I walked in that front door, and I've said, not to be, what's the word? Exaggerated or not to be bold at all. But I knew from the moment I walked in the front door that this is where I was supposed to be. There was no question in my mind. And it has been probably one of the most fulfilling, awe-filled positions I have ever held in my life. And I'm very honored to be here. There's not a day that I don't have that sense.
Mm-hmm. Mary, we are so, and I still say we, because I used to work at Gift of Life Transplant House when I first moved to Rochester myself. And again, like you, kind of always up for a challenge or something new. I was at Gift of Life on staff for 10 years. And it is an amazing place. And truly, we're lucky to have you because your compassion and your love, and obviously your connection to the transplant patients, because you really know what they're going through.
Right. And I will tell you, Denise, it's very fun as I go through the archives to find meeting minutes from you, and there you are. And the newsletters, the articles for the newsletters that you had written. So your legacy and your footprint is all over Gift of Life Transplant House. So we are grateful for that. Thank you.
I have to say this. This is kind of a funny thing. There's also a YouTube video, a
Oh,
Gift of Life YouTube video that I did, I think, 12 years ago.
oh my goodness. I'll have to look for it.
It's still up there. I went looking for it recently. And actually it's still the way we did that video. It's current. It's current today because we talk about, it was right when we were opening the what we call the new house. And I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about that later also. So
well, I think that probably defines Gift of Life Transplant House more than anything else, is that after 37 years now, we're almost into our 38th year, the mission is exactly the same. Things have not changed. How we do things has changed, but the reason that we're here doing them hasn't changed at all.
So tell everyone what the mission of Gift of Life is, please.
Sure. So Gift of Life Transplant House provides high quality, affordable accommodations to transplant patients and their caregivers in a supportive home-like environment. So there's a lot of pieces to that. Yeah. Probably the most important part is the supportive home-like environment. We really want this to be a place where people can come and say, boy, this is like my home. I feel this way. And in fact, gentlemen who just had a lung transplant, almost a year ago now, finishing up follow-up appointments today, came into my office crying, Mary, this is home for me. He said, this is home. I will miss you over Christmas. So yeah, that's how people feel.
It is really an amazing place. I think when I first started, I actually first started volunteering at Gift of Life when I first, not when I first moved to Rochester, but literally the week after I got married. So I moved to Rochester. I moved to Rochester January 2003, got married in October, got back from our wedding, and I had nothing to do because I had been planning a wedding. So I thought, well, I've got to volunteer somewhere. And, it just made sense that Gift of Life Transplant House would be the place that I would check out first.
Yeah.
And like you said, the minute you walked in the door, I felt the same thing. The minute I walked in the door, I knew this was a place that I needed to be. Mm-hmm. And I was there as a volunteer.
Yeah.
So that love and support that, that we talk about for transplant patients and their caregivers, we truly have always given to one another too. And I think everybody that walks in the door does feel that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's been 38 years and our mission stays the same. And again, I still say our, I can't help myself.
That's good.
What has changed?
Well, I think the way in which we, obviously technology has changed. So in the old days, they had notebooks where they would just handwrite the name and the address of the guest in the notebooks. So our technology has changed and come a long ways. The way that we do some of our cleaning protocols, while they were really, really good in the day, we know more now about what helps transplant patients, what kind of sanitary conditions have to be dealt with. We know a little bit more about even say washing dishes. Most of us rinse our dishes and don't get too worried about leftover food particles and put them in the dishwasher. Well, for a transplant patient, if that goes through the dishwasher and is left there, can create bacteria that for them can be life-threatening. So here at the house, guess what? Everybody washes their dishes by hand and then puts everything into a dish sanitizer so that it's completely sterilized and taken care of. But there's things like that have changed over the years. But again, it's remarkable how much has not changed. The fact that we, all of our staff interact very, very closely with all the guests that come. There isn't a separation of that at all. It's not like a hotel where the housekeeping staff are just going from room to room cleaning on a daily basis. When the guest comes, cleaning, they're walking to a clean room, but then they're responsible for that. it's home until they leave. And then when they leave, we go back. But in the midst of cleaning those rooms, the housekeepers are interacting with guests and talking with them and accepting their gratitude, those kinds of things. So I don't think when you say what has changed, there is not a lot that has changed. The most significant one is personnel and technology.
I'm really, really excited to hear about the technology because I was still there when we were writing people's names in the books. You've probably got my handwriting in there. So for those people who don't know what Gift of Life Transplant House is, and really, this is their first experience hearing about Gift of Life, tell us a little bit about, the transplant patient comes to the house and what should they expect? What does the house provide?
Well, so think about it just from your own very personal point of view. You've not been feeling real good. The doctor says to you, listen, you've got a rare kidney disease, but we can fix it with a transplant. But guess what? You're going to need to stay in Rochester for 3 to 4 weeks. You need to live here because we need to see you on a daily basis to check your medications, make sure you're not rejecting, those kinds of things. And so for most of us, the first question we would ask after that initial shock of, oh my gosh, would be, where am I going to live for 4 weeks? I cannot afford $145 a night for a hotel. So the Gift of Life provides, as I said, affordable. So it's only $30 a night. So when the guests come, we think it's really important to provide them with a tour of the facility. Now I say to people, that's not so you can just ooh and ah and say, oh my gosh, how beautiful it is, because it is beautiful.
It
but
is.
It's so that we can help you learn how we help you stay safe as a transplant patient. So stem cell transplant patients who are battling cancer, once they've had their stem cell, they literally have no immunity against anything at all. So we are fastidious about how we keep things clean and sanitary, but we rely on our guests to help us do that. So part of the way that we do that is that we have cleaning regimens that go on in our dining rooms. We have common dining rooms and common kitchens. The reason for that is because as a transplant patient, all of a sudden you're being told, you know what, perhaps the way you've been eating has not been the best way. And we want you to redo this. And we'd like you to stay away from the processed foods. Well, we all know when you're cooking fresh, you can't keep things in a cupboard for 3 weeks or 4 weeks at a time. So we provide kitchens fully equipped, ready to go. We provide refrigerator space, freezer space, pantry space, so that they can literally come in and prepare their own meals, cook, clean, get ready, and then eat in one of our common dining rooms. Mm-hmm. The beauty of the common dining room is that you have a chance to interact with other transplant patients, and that is truly where recovery happens, as you have a chance to commiserate about the events of the day, or talk a little bit about difficult news you got, or talk about good news. That's truly where the recovery and the healing comes from. And then every guest has, of course, their own room. Every guest is required to have a caregiver. And so they have their own guest rooms with their own separate bathrooms. And so you're free to go, to that room. We have no televisions in the rooms. That is oftentimes for people, you can just watch them kind of go,
what?
Television. Okay. But we all know we've been sick and laying in bed or not feeling well. And what happens? We lay there with the clicker, clap, 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 and we're not watching anything. We're not actively participating in life. We're just messing with that clicker. And so instead, we offer common areas, many throughout both houses, where we have televisions. The beauty again is, guess what? You come down, somebody's watching Wheel of Fortune, and you say, oh my gosh, that's my favorite show. Do you care if we watch? No, come on in. And then again, the healing and the recovery begins. So guests, while they're here, are responsible for doing their own cleaning, their own laundry, taking care of their own space. Again, we think that that's really important for them because, again, they're learning new lifestyle habits, and it gives them an opportunity to do that. But again, the camaraderie is what cannot be met with. So the guests, we give them a tour prior to them coming. They already know the facility. They know the expectations. They know we're going to be here if they have any questions at all. And we try and accommodate them in any way that we can. Our staff is noted for going above and beyond, going way beyond what they would need to do to help a guest. So
I would say, and the volunteers too. Gift of Life always gets amazing volunteers who truly are dedicated to the mission.
Oh, you're so right.
And even more so, really dedicated to the patients and caregivers. Something that you mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about the caregiver, because you mentioned a minute ago that each guest is required to have a caregiver. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Why is that so important?
Great question. Part of it is that, as you know, when you're not feeling well, the last thing you want to do is look at appointments or make sure you've taken your medication. So that caregiver is going to help you keep track of all these new medications, the proper dosages, appointments, what needs to go on, and then help you with preparing meals, help you with cleaning up, so that you can literally just go sit and watch TV. I'll finish doing the dishes, those kinds of things. That caregiver helps with that. The other thing the caregiver does is obviously it's going to provide moral support. It's going to be that person. So in Rochester, what I love about Rochester is it's common to see a couple walking down the street hand in hand because they're supporting one another as they're going through these tremendous challenges that they're facing. And that's what the caregiver provides. Another thing from a security point of view is that we are not providing fresh linens every day. We're not a hotel. So as a result, if someone were to be alone and slip and fall in the night, we would not go into their room to check to see whether or not they're doing okay the next day. And they literally could lay there for a couple of days before we would realize we hadn't seen them. And so the caregiver is also providing, they can call emergency services if necessary. We do have night supervisors in the house, but that person we rely on heavily to help us with the things that need to be done.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that the cost of staying per night is only $30.
Yes.
To this day, only $30.
It is. It has not changed.
That is amazing. And I think it's really important for our listeners to understand that, because when, even if you go to, a quote unquote cheap hotel, it's $100 a night plus tax plus.
Right.
So $30 a night, and a guest is getting a clean room, bedroom, and a bathroom. So it really is, they get their own space. They have these two beautiful kitchens, or actually I'm thinking about one house. There's two houses. They get these beautiful kitchens and the living spaces. They get all of this support and camaraderie, all for $30.
Exactly. And you're not tied to that one, those four walls of that room. If you're like me, it's very hard to go on vacation and know I'm going to be sequestered now in a hotel room for a week to a week and a half. It's almost impossible for me to do that anymore. And that's how, as guests are trying to recover, it becomes really, really difficult for them to do that. Now, as you can imagine, $30 a night charge is not making Gift of Life Transplant House sustainable. We are not meeting our overhead. So we rely heavily on the generosity of donors that have either been here, they have family members who have been here, or they're individuals in the community who understand what we're accomplishing and how much of an impact it's having on people's lives. So
one of the things I wanted to touch on too is, this just came to me, you talk about, being able to sustain Gift of Life Transplant House for our future guests. So you're the executive director. How is the house actually run? Like, do you have a staff? You have a staff? Do you have a board of directors? Tell us a little bit more. I know the answer to this question. Tell us a little bit about how Gift of Life is run, to ensure that the mission is moving forward, and that even when with $30 a night, we're really making sure that we can continue moving forward.
Right. That's such a good question. So obviously, because we are a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit, we have a board of directors that are intimately responsible for the fiduciary responsibilities and to make sure that the mission is being upheld by the organization. To do that, of course, there are accountability factors that go in. So they're reviewing on a monthly basis financial reports, occupancy reports, those types of things, to make sure that we're doing it well. But the people who are really doing the work are our staff. So we have 17 staff members only for 84 guest rooms between our two houses. So we have a facilities manager who has a staff of 3 custodians. We have an operations manager who has a staff of 4 housekeepers, 2 receptionists, and a volunteer coordinator. And then my staff, quote unquote, is a bookkeeper and our marketing PR person that works closely with me. And so we try to run very, very lean. We try to make sure that we're being as efficient as we possibly can be. But again, it falls to the board to make sure that the staff is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, I will tell you that we haven't mentioned this and we don't need to dwell on it at all, but during COVID, the board has been integral in making sure that we are following proper protocols, those types of things. So when COVID first came in March of last year, Hope Lodge, that's connected with the American Cancer Society, made the decision to close all of their locations throughout the country. Mm-hmm. And that created a panic among our guests here. And so we contacted the board, and the board said, no, we're staying open. Yeah. It doesn't matter. We're staying open. So as a result, then whenever I've had questions about how do we do this, what protocols do we need to follow, that's been to reach out to the board and make sure that they are aware of what's happening, make sure that they agree with what's going on. And of course, that's involved our medical advisory team. We are very, very proud of the fact, Denise, that we've stayed open the entire pandemic and have had no COVID. So we're so blessed. Every time I say that, I feel like I should knock on wood, because it certainly has not been, anything other than us praying about it almost every day. But our guests are following our protocols. Our staff is following the protocols. We sanitize the high touch areas every hour on the hour. We're working very hard to make sure. So, yeah.
I would imagine, though, knowing what I know of the staff and the people who stay, the guests who stay at Gift of Life, is they're already, sanitation is already in the forefront of their mind. Yes. So, when they had to tick it up, turn it up a tick, it really probably wasn't as difficult for staff and people staying at the house as it would have been in other places.
You are absolutely right. We felt like we were already 3 or 4 steps ahead of everyone else. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that we implemented was immediately when we heard about COVID and how it was spread, everybody had to wear a mask. Yep. We had some masks. We gave them all the guests, all the caregivers, and all the staff. And that was it. You wore a mask all the time. That was probably the biggest change that we made right away with COVID. But other than that, we felt like we were already prepared. So we just had a hard time finding toilet paper like the rest of the world.
Yeah, we struggled with that last year too. And there's just 2 of us.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, about the toilet paper. But you mentioned something before, 84 rooms, and the board keeps on top of, occupancy and how things are running. What is the occupancy like? What is your occupancy rate? How do you run at the house?
So we usually run right around 83%, which it's hard if you're not in the hospitality industry to know what that means. But that means that on any given day, we have about 5 vacant rooms. That's what that means. We have enough space for 5 additional guests and caregiver to come in. And so now, of course, COVID has impacted that. So last April, we went down to 40%, and then we've climbed ever since. Right now, we're almost at the 80% mark back. So we're almost back to what we were seeing pre-COVID. And that's typically where we run. However, what happens then is on some days, that means those 5 rooms are already occupied and spoken for. And as a result, the only option we have for people is to say, listen, we're going to send you to a hotel just for tonight. We're sorry we have to do it. And then you'll be on the top of the list tomorrow to come in. And so many people are so disappointed by that because they know what they're missing. Yep. They handle it very graciously, but they really want to be a part of it. So in 2019, we sent 477 people to hotels. In 2020, even though we had COVID, we ended up sending 132 to hotels. And this year we're on track for another roughly 250 people to hotels. So it's devastating for those people who feel like they can't just get in right away and stay. And then think about it. They don't really want to unpack because they know they're coming back the next. It's just inconvenient all the way around. So
it is. It is. And I recall when I was on staff there that we often had the same issue. And what we decided, or what the board decided, was we were going to build another house, which we did. The house, I always called the house across the street. I don't know why.
So that's probably helpful for people to know. So the first Gift of Life transplant house that we have sits on one side, on the north side of 2nd Street. And the other house, the other building that we have, is kitty corner across 2nd Street and does sit on the other side of the street. It's across the street. Yes. So
there's the original house, and then there's the new house, as we call it.
Exactly.
So I know that there's some things in the works because of this high occupancy rate and having to send other people, some of our people, to a hotel. What a little birdie tells me that there's something in the works.
Well, yes, I can. We had begun actually in 2019 conversations about an expansion and the need that we had to expand the house. Well, in 2019, as we hired an architect who has worked with us on that house, we want to expand at the house across the street, as you put it. So that's the house we'd like to expand. And we talked with him, and it started out that we were going to be able to add 27 rooms. And we thought, okay, well, that's great. 27 rooms, that's fantastic. Well, then, as we all know, March 2020 came. COVID hit, and everything kind of that became the priority. It was so annoying, but it did. And I recall about May, I thought, I'm taking back control of my life. I can't go day to day with just things happening to me. We are going to take back control. But as a result, the expansion had to move a little bit more quietly. So what we did is we contacted our architect, and then we contacted and actually hired a construction manager that would work with the architect to come up with those kinds of bids and things like that, so we'd have a good budget. Well, in the meantime, over COVID, our architect came back and said, you know what? I don't know what I was thinking. He said, we can add another 41 rooms. We don't have to add just 27. So yes, so those are the plans. Plans are done. We've hired our pre-construction manager. They have been working diligently. Construction documents are done. We are going to be pulling permits as soon as the supply chain problem is well in hand. And of course, as soon as we've got fundraising completed. We've got about 30% of the fundraising in. We'd like to have at least 70% before we break ground. But those things are kind of behind the scenes right now and always, always working. The good news is that there's the only urgency that we have in this is that we want to have guests that can stay with us at all times. But we haven't taken a mortgage. The board is very adamant that they want to raise the funds before we break ground. And I could support that 100%. So, so we're just working away to try to make that happen. So,
well, it's so important because I know because of, my life, because of Mark at the Transplant Center, that they're just doing more and more transplants. There are more and more people who are coming to Rochester who need an organ transplant or need a stem cell transplant. Right. And Gift of Life Transplant House is the best place for them to stay. So obviously this is so timely.
It is.
And obviously one of the ways that people can support Gift of Life Transplant House obviously is to donate and to sponsor or to help with the fundraising for the new addition. And that's really important. But I also know that things like toilet paper is really important too.
Yes, it is. Talk about some we call it the wish list. And what we've done is we've gone ahead and created on our website at gift-of-life.org. And then if you just click on the make a donation button, scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see the list of all the things that we've identified. But to make it really easy for everyone, if you just click on the Amazon link, it'll take you to the list of all the products that we have found work the best for us. A lot of people like to help us with vacuum cleaners, but we really need commercial vacuum cleaners. And so that's going to show you what type of vacuum cleaners. One of the things we go through really fast, as you can imagine, are sheets and blankets. And so this is going to give you the exact specifications of what we'd like and what we need, those types of things. So you're absolutely right. And then probably the most, I won't say little known fact, because if you've stayed here, you know right away. But for those people donating, candy is vitally important at Gift of Life Transplant House. Now, when you're a transplant patient, you may not feel like sitting down to a meal, but guess what? That little Hershey's chocolate bar wrapped all by itself, that's going to just hit the spot perfectly. And so you can't imagine how much candy we go through on a monthly basis. Bags and bags and bags of candy. And so those types of things are so important. And the wonderful thing about Amazon now is, guess what? You could live across the country and ship anything that we need here. And that's so wonderful.
I want to mention this. Amazon Smile is also a really great way to donate to Gift of Life Transplant House. This is a little bit of double dipping, but if you're going to be on Amazon and you're going to donate to Gift of Life Transplant House, by going on to Amazon Smiles, and it might be amazon.smile.com.
Yeah, it's smile.amazon.com. Yep.
You can actually go on there and click that you want any purchase that you make. There's a percentage that will go to Gift of Life Transplant House. Right. So
we have a lot of people that do that, and they actually literally send a check. A check, physical check, actually comes to the house. So you can be assured that they are truly following through. And those, anytime you use Amazon Smile, thank you for mentioning that, Denise. I'd forgotten that. So thank you.
And I'll make sure that we put those in that information in the show notes. Perfect. We've been talking about giving and donation during the holiday season. Obviously, this is an important time of year because we're thinking about donating. And of course, at Gift of Life Transplant House, it's kind of a little bit of a double entendre because the donation is important for the house so we can take care of patients, but also obviously this is also a good time to think about checking off on your driver's license that you would be a donor.
Absolutely.
and also going on to the stem cell, the bone marrow transplant
Yes. The
list.
bethematch.com.
Beamatch.com. I think I actually have that. That's the other one. I'll make sure that we have that information there.
And,
So,
Denise, it is sometimes a difficult conversation to have for people.
Absolutely.
Even though we maybe intellectually realize that this is what we need to do, it's a good thing. Sometimes the reality of it, it's just like, and I liken it very often to, it's very difficult sometimes for parents to sit down and talk with their children about their desires for their end of life. Because I don't want to hear it. And it's so critically important to do that. So making a decision about being an organ donor, for one thing, and it's an organ, eye, or tissue donor, is a decision that needs to be made very thoughtfully so that you can, when you're expressing it to others, say, these are why I've made these decisions. But the second most important thing is to talk to your family members and those people who are important to you so that they know, God forbid something happens, but if it does, they can easily say to the doctor, this was their request. They wanted to be an organ donor. It saves time. It allows the doctor to make those surgery decisions that will mean that another patient who's been waiting for some time can receive that life-saving donation. So yeah, it's critically important, but it's something that can't be entered into lightly and that needs to be talked about with family and friends.
Absolutely. And that's why I thought it was important for us to mention that, because it's just that one more step.
Right.
And, we've been talking about, giving during this time of year, and kind of choosing, it is a choice. Who do you donate to? What organization? What really touches you and touches your heart? Obviously, Gift of Life Transplant House has touched me, in many ways. I actually started as a volunteer at Gift of Life. And so for me, Gift of Life Transplant House, it makes sense. It fits my core values. And so I think it's really important for people to understand a little bit more about Gift of Life, what the mission is, and all of the information that we've given people.
Right.
So they can make a really good decision this year when it comes to their donations. Who are they going to give to and why?
We appreciate that.
Absolutely. Is there one last thing that you would like to leave us with?
Well, I will tell you about a gentleman that we knew of who had to make the decision you're talking about. It was kind of the end of the year. He was thinking about where he wanted to make a donation. And all of a sudden, I was asked to come to the front desk. There was a person who wanted to make a donation. And there was a very frail little old man there in his walker. And so we talked for just a few minutes, and he said, I'm not a rich man. I don't have a lot. He said, I live on Social Security, but I really feel it's important. What you're doing here is giving other people life. And he said, I really felt it was important to be able to donate here. So he reaches in to his walker and pulls out 3 envelopes. And in those envelopes are $8,000. He had been saving for all this time, and he knew he was going to give it to Gift of Life. And that's what he wanted, but he had been saving for years and years and years to give. And again, it was because he'd been paying attention. He'd been listening to what Gift of Life did and who we were all about. He was watching on TV, he was following us on Facebook, and he felt like that was the right thing to do. Now, maybe you're not in a position because you haven't saved for years and years to give an $8,000 donation. But I will tell you that those $10 donations and the impact they're going to have on the guests that are staying here are just as precious as a larger donation. And the guests know that the donations are coming in. We celebrate them all the time and make sure that the guests are aware that there are donations that are being made on their behalf. And over and over and over, I have a guest come to me and say, probably the most important thing is to know that even though they may not know who I am and what we're going through, there's somebody out there rooting, supporting and cheering me on. And that's how your donations make these guests feel and the impact. There's somebody there who's supporting me and cheering me on. And you're being an inspiration and a blessing and the story changer in someone's life you may never meet. So
I'm actually almost in tears.
Whoa.
Because I know on a personal level, because since I've been at the house. So Mary, for our listeners, please listen to what we're talking about today. For those of you who are obviously listening to us live, or those of you who are watching the replay, please consider a donation to Gift of Life Transplant House. Whether, like Mary said, it's a $10 donation, it's a donation of toilet paper or some of the items that are on the wish list. Be sure to go on smile.amazon.com and click on Gift of Life Transplant House to be the beneficiary of the Amazon program, their give back program. Gift of Life Transplant House, gift-of-life.org.
That's it. That
Very
is
simple.
it. Thank you so much, Denise.
Mary, thank you as always. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm so appreciative of all the information that you've given our audience today. And we look forward to more and more conversations. There's always something fun going on at Gift of Life Transplant House.
There's always something fun going on here.
So everybody check out their Facebook page, their website. There's always something going on at Gift of Life. It's a home that helps and heals. And it's also a place where people can get together to touch one another's lives and to truly transform.
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today or watching the replay. We're here every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Till next week, I will leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.